Hi, Kate and John. I'm happy to be joining you guys today, and we are looking forward to launch from Mission Control Houston.
For those of you that have recently tuned into our webcast, we are now 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 45 seconds away from the launch of the Axiom 3 crew to the International Space Station. Joining us now from ISS Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center is Courtney Beasley. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi, Kate and John. I'm happy to be joining you guys today, and we are looking forward to launch from Mission Control Houston.
Courtney, we're so happy to have you guys here today. We're happy to be together in this room and talk about this crew. AX3 is the first, all European crew. This is a historic flight for them. It's a historic flight for Axiom and NASA and SpaceX. This is an incredible group. They've worked diligently, both individually and together, to get to this moment. They're representing, across the four of them, 5 different nations. As we mentioned, they've trained extensively as a team, but now they're ready to be a part of that effective and contributing ISS team.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, Michael Lopez Alegria is the first repeat flyer in the Dragon program history, which
Dragon SpaceX, I think that was for cabin fan. Go ahead.
Actually, Jake, it was for cabin temp, and we're feeling just a little bit on the cool side here, wondering what the options are for warming it up.
All right, some quick back and forth there with the crew and SpaceX Core, basically just asking to if there's any options to warm up the cabin. They're a little cool. As I was saying, MLA, our commander today, he is our first repeat flyer in the history of the Dragon program, which I guess means that we have to make a frequent flyer member club of some sort.
I think you need to give him a punch card for this, and he's no stranger to Dragon, as we're going to look at now. So the voice you heard there, like Kate just mentioned, Michael Lopez Alegria, or MLA, who is no stranger to human spaceflight. He's actually a dual citizen of the United States and Spain, and AX3 marks his 6th mission to space, having completed 3 space shuttle flights and a Soyuz mission as a NASA astronaut, prior to commanding AX1 with Axiom Space. MLA holds the NASA record for both the total number of spacewalks and the cumulative amount of time spent conducting spacewalks. In 2020, he was inducted into the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame, and today, when he's not in low Earth orbit, MLA serves as Axiom Space's chief astronaut.
Our pilot on today's flight, Walter Villade, is from the Italian Air Force and is taking his inaugural trip to low Earth orbit. Villade currently serves in the Italian Air Force and as head of the Italian Air Force's representative office in the United States. He has completed cosmonaut training as a space engineer, participated in multiple analog training. All right, just notification there to the crew. Back to Walter. He has completed cosmonaut training as a space engineer, participated in multiple analog training missions, and flown a variety of aircraft and missions as an active flight engineer in the Italian Air Force. This mission is significant for Italy in that it commemorates the 100th year since the founding of the Italian Air Force.
Now, our 3rd crew member for today's mission is Mission Specialist Alper Izarace. Through this mission, Alper becomes the first Turkish astronaut to go to space. With 15 years of experience across a myriad of aircraft for the Turkish Air Force, Yüzerace got his start in the Air Force Academy in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned a master's degree from the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. He then flew as a commercial airline captain for several years before returning to duty in the Turkish Air Force. This mission also marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Republic of Turkey.
And finally, we have Mission Specialist Marcus Want, a lieutenant colonel in the Swedish Air Force who flew 9 years as a fighter pilot and graduated from the U.S. Navy Test Pilot School at the top of his class. In November of 2022, Marcus was selected by the European Space Agency as an astronaut reserve. However, with this mission, AX-3, he becomes the first project astronaut in ESA's history, a new designation within their ranks. In just a few short hours, he'll be only the second ESA astronaut of Swedish nationality to ever go to the International Space Station, a milestone marked in a year of jubilee as the 500th anniversary of the founding of the country of Sweden. So, that is the AX-3 crew. We are now under an hour until liftoff. We're at T-minus 58 minutes and 10 seconds, and they're going to be heading to the International Space Station. All right, and with that, let's check in with NASA's Courtney Beasley.
Thanks, Kate. I'm here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where teams staff this room around the clock to monitor the crew and systems aboard the orbiting laboratory. And today, they're ensuring that the station is ready to receive Dragon and the AX-3 crew. Since NASA opened up the space station for commercial activity in 2019, the agency has continued to work with private industry to prepare for the future of low Earth orbit. Now, NASA's long-term goal is to no longer be a provider of low Earth orbit destination, but to be a customer, one of many, purchasing commercially owned and operated services. To ensure this path of tomorrow, we have to work together today. Enabling private astronaut missions on board the space station helps us to refine and mature the processes needed for the future, with NASA astronauts working side by side with private and national astronauts in a new age of science and discovery. And we take this next step together as we continue counting down to launch the AX-3 crew to the International Space Station. Now, it's an incredibly busy time in low Earth orbit and beyond, and NASA wants to scout the moon before returning astronauts. So next month, it will send several science experiments aboard Intuitive Machines' Nova C lander, which will launch on a Falcon 9 rocket. Nova C is expected to touch down on the moon next month, and you can watch live coverage of the historic landing on NASA TV and NASA Plus. Now let's check back in with John and Kate in Hawthorne.
Thank you so much, Courtney. You know, it's such an exciting future we have to look forward to, and it doesn't really feel that far off. You know, every day behind us, all over the country, back in Houston, there's work happening to bring about this vision.
Yeah, that's right. Even as we speak, SpaceX teams are preparing for our upcoming launch of the Intuitive Machines Nova C lunar lander, known as the IM-1 mission. This will be the first SpaceX-provided launch of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative, a key part of NASA's Artemis lunar exploration efforts. And down at Starbase Texas, we're continuing to build, test, and fly Starship, the world's most powerful launch vehicle ever developed. It's a fully reusable transportation system that will transform how we access space because it's designed to carry a massive amount of cargo and large numbers of people to Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. We completed 2 flight tests last year, one of them you see here on your screen now, and 2024 is lining up to see even more starships take flight. We're still in the testing phase, but things like flying rapidly, full system reuse, and on-orbit refilling will be key to building and staffing a viable moon base. And right now, we're gearing up for Test Flight 3, currently targeted for sometime in February. We're also building a second Starbase launch tower, which visualization you see there, and that will further increase Starship's flight opportunities. And I love this. This is so cool looking. It's not that far off in the future. With our Starship Human Landing System, or HLS, we're part of the global team with NASA and companies including Axiom Space that will put astronauts back on the moon under the Artemis program. First, we're going to fly, and fly often on flight tests, one of which will be an uncrewed mission all the way to the moon. This will take place before the crewed Artemis 3 mission, which will be the first human expedition of the moon surface since 1972. Also in testing, our engineers are proving out all systems necessary to make a trip to the moon possible, like propulsion, life support, even the elevator that you see here that will take crew and cargo from the Starship hatch down to the lunar surface. It's literally a space elevator.
That's awesome, Kate. And in addition to the launch and landing capabilities that you just mentioned, another essential component of the Artemis program is a spacesuit that is capable of executing a wide array of mission objectives. A spacesuit really is a spaceship. It's just a little smaller and in human form. So, in order to develop a lunar spacesuit that meets all of the objectives for Artemis, Axiom Space is building the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or Axiom-U, back in Houston, Texas. Our next-generation spacesuit is built to provide greater flexibility and mobility, allowing astronauts to work on the moon in ways that were not possible 50 years ago. We've also put a strong emphasis on modularity, meaning that the Axiom-U suits will support a wide range of body sizes and types. From the hand-built soft goods to the life support, advanced avionics, and communication systems, this entire Axiom-U system is built with integrity and care from head to toe. And I'm truly honored to say that I'm a small part of that amazing team. Leveraging years of this human spaceflight experience and partnering with numerous industry leaders, Axiom Space is ensuring that the Axiom-U allows astronauts to succeed on Artemis and beyond.
There's so much to look forward to with this groundswell of focus on the moon. It's just incredible that humans are finally going back to the moon, and the efforts of SpaceX and Axiom get to play a vital role in that.
I know. I love that we get to be a part of this in our generation, right? Like, this is what commercialization of space looks like. It takes cooperation, it takes coordination, and a lot of dedication. And AX3 is a critical step in demonstrating those core components.
Absolutely. Now, for those that have just recently joined, we are now about 51.5 minutes away from launch. The clock continues to count down to the launch of AX3. So let's share some of the highlights of the day that got us to where we are now.
Exactly. So crew wrapped up their quarantine phase, taking a flight from their quarantine facility at Kennedy over to Kennedy Space Center. You can see them there on the helicopter as they think about their flight and pass over the Cape. And what I think is really cool about this is they get to see their vehicle from this perspective too as they come in, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, you know, they're going to touch down, they're thinking about their mission, and then they get to wave to their families. They get to see, they haven't seen them in so long. They get to wave to them, have a final goodbye. And at this point, this is where we really hand over to SpaceX to complete the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, look at those smiles. Everyone is excited, as they should be.
Yeah.
So after they arrive and after they're handed over to the crew, they go through a series of events such as putting their suits on. Obviously, they take a ride up to, here we can see there. This is the moment where they walked out of the Falcon support building. This is where our SpaceX suit-up room is located. They stand here, do another wave. Really, this was the first opportunity that we got to see the crew in their suits today. Got in those Teslas and drove up to the launch pad, which is about roughly a half mile away from where those doors are. I'm always curious what music they're listening to during this ride. You can see here that they are pulling up to the launch pad, 2 Teslas. We have the crew split in half there with some closeout team members that obviously help support them. We lovingly refer to them as the ninjas because we see them all around assisting the crew in things like getting into or ingressing the capsule. So here, this is one of my favorite moments of launch day when they get to see their rocket up close. And man, just thinking about the fire that's going to come out at the bottom there in just under an hour.
Yeah, and at this point you can see our commander and our pilot walking down, as well as Marcus and Alper to their Dragon capsule before they get in.
Yeah, so at this point in time, that side hatch is closed. We had the post ingress crew briefing, and we heard great news. We heard that the weather is looking good. I think the exact words were weather is great and that everything is healthy. So both Falcon 9 and Dragon vehicles are ready to go to space, just like the crew.
Excellent recap, Kate. All right, well, it's important to remember that this crew has not walked this path to flight alone. Earlier today, they waved to their friends and family before suiting up, as we just saw, but that wasn't the first round of cheers that their families had for them. Yeah, those are pretty wise words from John Schaffner there from AX2.
Yeah, it's just so fun to see everybody's cheers. Space really is for everyone, including everyone that loves the people going to space. So.
Exactly.
T-minus 45 minutes. Both control rooms go into lockdown and remain in that state until the LaunchScape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of LaunchScape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control at this time. You may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Launch control copies, proceeding with arming crew arm for movement.
Well, there you heard it. We are go to proceed with propellant load in just under 10 minutes. And we are beginning to retract that crew access arm. Both the Falcon 9 and Dragon are go for launch. Wow, great view of that on your screen right now. And in a moment, we should hear some additional directions from our launch director to the team. Now, of course, the crew is currently on board, again with that great view of the crew access arm moving away from Dragon. They're at historic launch pad 39A. So now the range continues to be go for launch, and we're monitoring the clearance area around the launch pad, as well as air and sea space around the flight corridor. Even though we have been keeping an eye on some possible storm cells near the launch site, the conditions are predicted to be acceptable for launch. Downrange landing zones, if needed for an escape, are also go. Now, the full retraction of that crew access arm is expected to take about 2 minutes and will be followed almost immediately with the arming of the launch escape system.
Crew arm retraction is complete.
There's confirmation that that's complete. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Kate.
Thanks, Ronnie. As we heard, the crew access arm is now moved out of the way. It is in its launch configuration. This is one of the last physical changes to the pad that we will see prior to the liftoff of the AX-3 crew. The next milestone that we have coming up will be arming of the launch escape system.
Dragon SpaceX, with that, you are go for Section 6, close visors, and arm launch escape system.
SpaceX Dragon in work.
All right, so right now the crew is activating the launch escape system. They're using the tablets there, the touchscreen in front of them. The system is the first of its kind escape system. It provides the escape capability all the way to orbit. It is our...
SpaceX Dragon, visors closed, arming launch escape system.
SpaceX copies.
We take every measure possible to ensure the crew has options at all times, including an escape in the worst of scenarios. It is our most solemn duty to make sure the crew gets home to their families. And we're here now seeing like we said, the crew is activating the launch escape system. If engaged, it would utilize the Super Draco engines, which are basically extra powerful versions of the Draco engines that Draco uses while on orbit. So generally speaking, we don't want to activate the Super Dracos, but they're there in case if necessary. So launch escape system arming is now underway, but let's talk a little bit about the control rooms that we are operating.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
All right, there we heard the call out telling us that launch escape system is now activated. So here, this is our mission control center, and here just behind us, actually, at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We also have launch control at Firing Room 4 at Cape Canaveral. That team is responsible for monitoring Falcon 9 throughout the countdown and the launch, whereas here, mission control is responsible for close monitoring of the crew and Dragon every step of the way as the spacecraft orbits the planet along its customized flight path. On console, or on headset, as we say, are a number of key positions who are monitoring the health of the vehicle and the crew. The mission director, call sign MD, as you'll hear out on the nets, that person's responsible for mission success and is in charge of the room. You'll also hear a specific role dedicated to communicating to the AX-3 crew. We've heard from this individual a couple of times already today. This is Jake Vendel today. This is the crew operations and resource engineer, call sign CORE on the nets. The other positions are focused on things like software, propulsion, navigation, avionics, life support systems, and ultimately communications with the ground segments. SpaceX team members will also rotate on and off to ensure that we have 24/7 coverage of crew and Dragon for the entire duration of the mission, all the way through splashdown. So fun fact, we also have a crew supporting the NASA Crew 7 team in an adjacent control room just next door to this one. So yeah, we have 24/7 coverage for all Dragons up at the space station.
That's awesome, Kate. And on that note, for Axiom Space, teams in Houston, as you can see there, coordinate mission support at Axiom Mission Control Center, or MCCA, as you can see on your screen. MCCA is an officially certified control center, joining the large network of other control centers, like you just mentioned, Kate, that support ISS from all over the world. From this secure facility, teams have live access to voice, video, data, all of that streaming from the ISS, and can work alongside their NASA counterparts to run on-orbit preparations and monitor every aspect of the mission in real time, 24/7, for the duration of the mission. This room is led by what we call an AXLE, or Axiom Operations Lead. And around the room are also additional supporting flight controller positions that are each responsible for different aspects of mission support. That includes things like research, communications, medical, integration and stowage, and timeline operations. This is a significant step in our journey to expand access to low Earth orbit, as it is only the 12th ground segment partner for the ISS program. And through this facility, we are providing our customers and the global community a front row seat to the work being done on station.
Yeah, as you can tell by the names like core and axle, these are really important roles, and everything else kind of flows around them as the center point in those leading those operations, whether it's on the Axiom side or the SpaceX side. So as we await our T0 in just under 39 minutes from now, the ground operations teams are doing a series of system checks to make sure both the Dragon and Falcon are ready for launch. Let's take a look at what the Ascent portion of today's mission will look like.
Once we hit T-0, we'll watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic Launch Pad 39A, which you have a great view of right now, and begin to make their ascent. At about 43 seconds into flight, Falcon 9's engines will throttle down to help us pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic, or faster than the speed of sound.
Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. From there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that happen in rapid succession. First is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin engines shut off in preparation for stage separation. Stage separation is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing, as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event.
That's second engine start 1, or SES1, where the Merlin vacuum engine on board stage 2.
Expect loud venting from the vehicle in 30 seconds.
Where the engine on stage 2 lights up and propels the second stage, along with our AX-3 crew and Dragon, into orbit.
As stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, stage 1 will execute 3 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first is the boost back burn, where 3 of the Merlin 1D engines will reignite and shut down. This heads the first stage back to Cape Canaveral. The second burn, or the entry burn, helps slow the stage down in preparation.
Falcon 9 tanks are venting for the startup propellant load.
Second burn, or entry burn, helps to slow the stage down in preparation for that entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. And about 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn will bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land back on land near the launch site about 8 minutes into the mission.
And while that first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we'll wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion. Then, Dragon will begin preparations to separate from the second stage. About 3 minutes after the second stage reaches orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from stage 2. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage.
The nose cone deploy sequence will initiate just before T plus 12 minutes and then finish around T plus 15 minutes. This will expose Dragon's docking mechanism in advance of its arrival at the International Space Station. For us, these Dragon missions are important for safely flying astronauts so they can conduct scientific research and other activities in space, but also because they are laying the foundation for the future where more people from more countries all around the world will have an opportunity to travel to space, whether it's low Earth orbit, the moon, Mars, or beyond. In the history of human spaceflight, less than 700 people have ever been to orbit. At SpaceX, we want to help create a future where not just hundreds of people, but thousands and ultimately millions of people can travel off Earth to live and work in space and on other planets. Last year, we flew 6 Dragon missions. This year, we could launch up to 8 missions, including 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going...
Propellant load has started.
All right, right now we just heard the call at Falcon 9 has begun loading its propellants, liquid oxygen, and RP1, rocket grade kerosene. So good news there. As I was saying, this year that could include 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going to increase in the future. Thus far, we've only launched crew missions from Launch Complex 39A, which is what you see on your screen now. However, to support our growing manifest of Dragon missions, we've recently made some new upgrades to our other Florida launch pad, Space Launch Complex 40, which you see there with a brand new crew access arm being lifted. We're on our way to having 2 launch pads capable of supporting human spaceflight missions, meaning we'll have more opportunities to fly people on Dragon to orbit. If you're interested in helping us advance the future of human spaceflight and potentially fly on a future Dragon mission, check out spacex.com/human spaceflight to learn more. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the training that the crew has gone through in order to be ready for this mission. Altogether, the Axiom 3 mission crew spent about 35 days training inside Dragon, and crew members individually received additional training specific to their role, learning SpaceX protocols, ISS systems, and preparing for the science and outreach activities that they'll be conducting while in space. Private astronaut training is rigorous. To prepare the AX-3 crew for their mission, our teams here at SpaceX have spent the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, how to live in microgravity, and running simulations of full missions from inside our Dragon training capsules. The training program includes nearly 100 different lessons covering all aspects of flight. And if you're thinking it's kind of hard to tell what's the true training and what's the real capsule, that's true, because they're pretty much identical, and that's the point. The team also spent time at the launch pad, in the suit-up room, and working through emergency procedures that would be necessary in the unlikely event of a pad abort scenario. So let's take a further look at this crew in action.
Exactly. The crew spent extensive amounts of training time in historic Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center, learning from certified instructors on all critical systems necessary to ensure a successful stay aboard the orbiting laboratory. The team even prepared for unlikely emergencies, like you mentioned, Kate, and learned how to provide first aid in a microgravity environment. Additionally, they learned how to prepare food and make selections for their meals, as well as learning other mission control positions and how mission control operates to better ensure that mission success during their flight. They also had a chance to familiarize themselves with the gear that will enable them to document their trip, their research, and help them connect with those back on Earth during their outreach events. ESA and JAXA also played a critical role in crew's training. Each module on orbit has its own nuances, so gaining insight into the specialties of their racks and modules is necessary, especially for this mission. Extensive training on station navigation, on-orbit familiarization, emergency response, and repetition of walking through processes and procedures all help the crew maximize every second that they have during their flight. Simulating science research, operations, and even discussing how to sleep in space are all necessary lessons on the path to mission readiness. Now, the National Outdoor Leadership School, or NOLS, provides a very unique Earth-based experience for many astronauts before they fly. This is really a bonding experience for the crew. It can't be overstated how much teamwork factors into every aspect of their flight together, and this training in particular aims to thoroughly establish that. They also focus on survival skills, resilience, leadership, equally as important as followership, and overall teamwork to ensure they really are more than just passengers on the same rocket. The camping and outdoor adventure provides a solid foundation for the team to build on throughout their training. NOLS was definitely a highlight of this crew's preparation and training, and you can hear it in their voices and see it on their faces when they talk about their bond with each other. Now, you can't truly experience flying into space until you fly into space. But some really unique tools have been developed to provide the closest experience possible. An altitude chamber can challenge the body with oxygen deprivation in a controlled and safe manner, while human-sized centrifuges send the crew members for a spin to simulate the G-forces that they'll experience on launch and re-entry. It can be a bit nauseating, but it does help the crew know exactly what to expect on launch day. Now, at the end of it all, a mission patch is celebrated and it is hung in a tradition since the earliest days of spaceflight. So fittingly, as AX-3 heads to the International Space Station, the crew had the chance to be present for the patch hanging ceremony of their mission patch in Building 9 on that module in Johnson Space Center. Spaceflight is a serious business, but moments of levity and celebration like this help everyone pause and reflect on the incredible accomplishments being achieved every day. No matter how many patches join a canvas like this one, each one is incredibly special because of the people who make it possible. The crew and those here on Earth supporting each mission. So now for more on each crew member's portfolio, we're going to send you out to the Kennedy Space Center with Sonia Gavankar-McKay, the Axiom Space Director of Digital Strategy, who is joined by Axiom's Chief Scientist, Dr. Lucy Lowe.
Stage 2 cryohelium loading has started.
It's going great, Sonia. Thank you very much for that. You know, hearing all that different research really kind of cements how important and unique each mission is, right? Each mission has its own suite of research. It has its own crew that makes up that mission. And mission patches really are a way of showing that symbolism and showing how unique that is, right? So they end up everywhere. There's one in that Dragon capsule. There's a few in that Dragon capsule now, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
But they end up in white rooms. They end up on orbit. They end up on laptops and notebooks. It's a very big deal for crew to be central in helping design this patch because it's such a lasting mark of their dedication and hard work. And the AX-3 crew has put their mark on spaceflight history with the AX-3 mission patch. All 4 astronauts are highlighted by their names, a star, and unique graphics for each nation that they represent. With the commander, Michael Lopez Alegria, holding dual citizenship, 5 national flags mark the top edge. The destination, the International Space Station, is the anchoring element in the middle. And interesting to note, the ISS resembles pilot's wings. So it should be no surprise, given that all 4 members are indeed pilots. Along the bottom of the patch, we see the mission's motto, the phrase plus ultra, in Latin meaning further beyond. So together, all of this builds on the mission's theme of exploration and its slogan, exploring further without borders.
Yeah, like you said, they do end up everywhere. My personal favorite place is there inside the capsule. There's 2 patches in there, one from the Crew 4 mission and one, of course, from the AX-2 mission, which also took this capsule to space. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to be flying so much that we are going to potentially run out of space for patches.
Put them on the back of the seats, maybe.
Yeah. Now, the SpaceX teams have teams all across, or SpaceX has teams all across the country supporting our missions in key roles, and they're in key locations such as our mission director, our core or crew operations and resource engineer, which you see there on your screen now. And these people are very important. We keep talking about the countdown, and this launch countdown is the framework that syncs all of these teams up together. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've heard a lot of that today, right? As we're talking, we're hearing these loops or nets, right, of all these flight controllers talking. That's because communication is key. The entire mission, from launch, on orbit, all the way back down to splashdown, is a tightly choreographed dance between all of those parties, and that's where communication comes in.
For sure. It's precise communication specifically is paramount throughout the mission in order to be successful, not just for today and on the way to the station, but continually for the next 2 weeks, all the way through splashdown. Like I mentioned before, we have another team supporting the capsule that's on station for Crew 7. So yeah, it's all the way through until the mission is complete.
Exactly, and highlighting that communication, you see those 2 teams just on your screen there. Those are 2 of the many that work together. So to help facilitate that comm, Axiom Space is connected with that entire network of participants through MCCA in Houston, our mission control center at Axiom headquarters. That's what you see on the right there. And from SpaceX, NASA, and other international space agencies and researchers, we can talk together. So there are teams monitoring and participating in this mission around the world, including mission controllers in Japan and across Europe. When you all add it up, it really is a truly international endeavor.
Yeah. Now, speaking of international, let's check back in with International Space Station Mission Control Center at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Courtney, how are things looking over there?
Hey, Kate. The space station team here in Houston is focused on the critical systems on the station, all continuing to function as expected ahead of launch. The teams have verified the command path from the ground up through our constellation of communication satellites to the station, and everything is looking good, and the station will be ready to receive Dragon Saturday morning. Now, once the AX-3 crew arrives at the station, there will officially be 7 nations aboard the station. They will be greeted by the Expedition 70 crew, NASA astronauts Andy Mogensen, Jasmine McBelly, and Laurel O'Hara, Roscosmos cosmonauts Konstantin Borisov, Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub, and JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. And once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist the Axiom Space and Space Station astronauts with leak checks as they work to open hatches on both the Dragon side and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch opening to take place approximately 2 hours after docking. Flight directors Diane Daly and Diana Trujillo are on console now, leading flight controllers for launch, and flight director Judd Freeling will lead teams for docking on Saturday. Mission control in Houston is go for launch. Now with that, let's connect with Sonia at Kennedy Space Center. We'll head back out to John in Hawthorne.
All right, for those of you that have recently tuned in, we are now within 20 minutes until the launch of AX-3 to the International Space Station. Officially, T-minus 18 minutes on the dot. We've had a pretty clean countdown so far today. As I mentioned before, this launch countdown is the framework that syncs everybody together. We have teams in Houston, here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, of course at the Cape itself, firing room 4, and everything is proceeding nominally. The reports that we heard earlier during the post-crew ingress briefing was that the weather was great, although we can see here on our screen a little cloudy, but we see some blue skies through there, so love to see that. We also heard that the team was working no major issues. Both Falcon and Dragon remained healthy. At T-minus, I believe it was 35 minutes, T-minus 35 minutes, we began prop load or propellant loading. We now see some of these white clouds billowing from the vehicle. This is totally normal during this propellant load phase. We are currently loading our super chilled, also known as densified liquid oxygen onto the vehicle, as well as rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1. We will continue to see these clouds kind of forming, and we'll get even more of them right after those closeout lines complete at T-minus 3 and 2 minutes, when both the first and second stages complete all of its propellant loading. Like I said, everything continues to look great. The crew is currently strapped into their seats. There's a 5-point safety harness. You can think of it like a seatbelt, but it's a little bit more advanced than that. Actually, we see a live view of the crew there waiting so patiently as we are getting...
Load has started.
All right, so there we heard that call out that stage 2 LOX load has initiated. That is that super chilled liquid oxygen being loaded onto the Falcon 9 second stage, which of course is the part of the rocket just below that black and white trunk section that we see there on screen. So the crew, at this particular view, the person on the far left is Marcus Want, one of our mission specialists. To his right is pilot Walter Villaday. To his right is Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, or MLA, and on the very far right, mission specialist Alper Izarauche. Fun fact for today's flight, it is the first time that we have a repeat flyer on Dragon. That's Commander MLA. He flew on the Axiom 1 mission, and it's so exciting to see him flying once again in Dragon today. He's pretty much an expert at this point.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for that update, Kate. And now for an update from Sonia Gavankar-McKay at Kennedy Space Center with Deputy Administrator Bill Nelson.
Fields. I mean, Axiom Space, of course, building the Axiom Station. We're working on the suits that'll be worn on the moon by the Artemis crew. How important are these partnerships for NASA?
Well, it's essential. We want to get out of low Earth orbit. We want to go and explore the cosmos. And so the more that we can bring commercial business off the face of the Earth up to low Earth orbit, and, for example, replace the International Space Station when it ages out in 2030 with a commercial space station that then we can become a person who rents space to train our astronauts before we send them out to the moon and on to Mars. Or the business aspect, pharmaceutical research, pharmaceutical production, all kinds of different research utilizing the properties of microgravity in space.
So you're seeing the Axiom Station as an expansion of the area that is available to do this work, and this dynamic shift between NASA and organizations like Axiom Space really offers something new to the landscape. This really is the next golden age, isn't it?
Well, and Axiom is one of several that are now, with incentive money from NASA, building their concepts of a space station for low Earth orbit. And I am certainly hopeful that they are going to be successful, and that increasingly as they do research in space, they're finding out that there's a business case in order that they can actually have a profitable business.
Well, that's what we're looking forward to, and we're looking forward to just this great moment as we build these partnerships, these relationships. Thank you so much for having us here and for being part of this broadcast and sharing this wonderful moment for all of our organizations, SpaceX, Axiom Space, NASA, working together as usual, right?
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Senator. Thanks for joining us.
Go AX3.
Go AX3, that's right. As we charge towards terminal countdown to launch, Michael Lopez Alegria, today's commander, has a special message for his crew. Let's take a look.
Great view of our AX3 crew there, strapped in and ready for liftoff just over 10 minutes from now.
Dragon SpaceX, confirmed crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, the displays are still configured. And, do you mind if I say something?
MLA, I do not mind at all. You've got the floor.
So first I want to thank our partners who had the vision and the conviction to help Axiom open access to humans to low Earth orbit, and they are the various ministries of its government, the Space Technologies Research Institute of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, and the Turkish Space Agency and its ministry, as well as the Swedish National Space Agency in tandem with ESA. And I also want to thank the team. If you're listening to this through an earpiece sitting in Hangar X and Launch Control or in Hawthorne and Mission Control, you're on the team. And the same is true of people who'll be sitting at those consoles and consoles just like them, and Mission Control in Houston and the Payload Operations and Integration Center in Huntsville. Same is true for all the trainers that helped us get where we are today with the crew ready to launch. And of course, the engineers, technicians, managers, and executives who, over decades, designed, assembled, and are now operating the most complex vehicle in the world that we have the privilege to go visit. Same is true for the visionaries who conceived and developed this amazing rocket that we're sitting on and the beautiful and capable capsule that we're sitting in. And if you're in the Rescue Ops Center, you guys are on the team, and of course, so are our friends and families who have given us their love and support from the very first step of this journey. And last but not least, the team at Axiom Space, the people who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. To the four of us that are lucky enough to man the good ship Freedom at this point, are humbled to be on the team. We're grateful to our teammates, and we are go for launch. Plus ultra.
Copy all, Mike. As we just ticked through T-minus 8 minutes, I'll let you know you've got a whole bunch of people rooting for you here and indeed all over the world. Godspeed, Axiom 3.
Some really nice words there coming to us from Commander Michael Lopez Alegria. We are now approaching 7 minutes until liftoff of the AX-3 crew. The next event that we'll hear is that Stage 1 engine chill has begun.
Engine chill has started.
And just on time, that call out tells us that we are now flowing a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen through the engines, through those turbo pumps to help bring the temperature down of that hardware. This helps us to reduce any chance of thermal shock whenever the full flow of that super chilled liquid oxygen flows into the engines. LOX load continues for Falcon 9. We're fully...
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
So good call outs there that we have completed loading RP1, which is a highly refined type of kerosene on board Stage 1 of Falcon 9. You've got that great view on your screen. As we mentioned earlier, Falcon 9 is an RP1 and liquid oxygen fueled vehicle, so LOX fueling continues on the vehicle on both the first and second stage.
Blue skies there at the launch site. We're launching out of pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. We are 60% go for those weather conditions, which we're always keeping an eye on around the Florida airspace. Next event that we have coming up is the terminal count for Dragon. This involves a couple of things, but primarily just means that Dragon will be transitioning to internal power. Great view there of the Dragon capsule, as well as the Dragon trunk, which is the unpressurized section just below the pressurized section, which of course is where we have the crew sitting. Propellant remains underway. We are completely loaded with all of our RP1, that rocket grade kerosene. We're still underway.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
So like Kate mentioned, we are heading into terminal count, and Falcon 9 is ready for that configuration. We also just heard the call out that the Falcon 9 tanks are pressurized for strong back retraction. The strong back is that white structure you see to the right of the vehicle right now. That's used not only to connect the vehicle's umbilicals, but also as a structural support system up until it begins to retract, which we just heard the call out for here. That's the mechanism we use both to move the rocket out to the launch side and pull it into its vertical orientation ahead of launch. Now we'll keep an eye on it as it retracts slightly here on your screen.
We'll be able to see those clamp arms begin to open. And there they are now. And then that strong back will retract a couple degrees away. It will retract even further upon ignition of the engines to clear the way for Falcon 9's ascent. As I mentioned before, RP1 is completely loaded onto the vehicle. We're still loading liquid oxygen onto the first and second stage. And obviously some happy cheers as the crowd is growing outside of Mission Control Hawthorne, as you see there on your screen. It's always awesome to have an astronaut launch, but especially one during the day.
With that confirmation, we know that stage 1 is fully loaded. Team is thrilled to hear that news behind me. At liftoff, stage 1 combined between that RP1. There's confirmation that Dragon is on internal power and headed into the final minutes of our countdown. As I was saying earlier, at liftoff, Falcon 9 will be burning nearly 700 gallons of fuel per second. Great views there, too, of our crew inside Dragon, awaiting liftoff just over 2 minutes from now.
We're now standing by for completion of LOX load on the second stage. Just topping off. And there's that call out. And more cheers from our crowd here at Hawthorne, California.
Dragon is in auto idle.
Confirmation there that Dragon is in auto idle. Wow, great view of 39A on your screen right there as we head toward launch. Call out to our crew there that loud venting is expected.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There's that confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup and Dragon is in countdown, which means that the vehicles are now controlling the final seconds as we lead up to liftoff.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
And there's confirmation from our flight director.
Go for launch.
We are go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
Further beyond, opening the door for more to follow. Godspeed AX3.
Of course, if you are just joining us, this is the launch of the Axiom 3 launch to the International Space Station. Those incredible views on your screen, and there's our first shot of the AX3 crew inside Dragon on Ascent. Now, in just a few seconds here, we should hear the call out that Falcon 9...
Nominal power and telemetry.
There's that call out that Falcon 9's engines are throttling down to help us pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out for Max Q.
Falcon 9.
And that Falcon 9 is going faster than the speed of sound. Now, at this point, we will begin to throttle Falcon 9's engines back up. There's that call out for mission control as well, as our AX3 crew continues on their way to space.
We're now T+1 minute and 32 seconds into flight. The next event we have is MVAC chill, similar to what there's that call telling us that, again, we're flowing a little bit of that super chilled liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call there was one of the abort mode callouts that the crew is calling out as they are making their ascent on Falcon 9. Now, we're less than 30 seconds or a few seconds away from 4 events that will happen in rapid succession. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, as it's there on the bottom of your screen, stage separation, ignition of the first stage engine, and the first stage's boost back burn.
Stage 1, throttle down.
That call telling us that the engines are beginning to throttle down.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Some loud cheers here as we can see that the first and second stages have separated. A beautiful view there. The brighter light is the second stage under power of the MVAC engine. That first stage booster is now heading back toward the Florida coast. One thing I love about daylight launches is we're going to get some amazing views. We should be able to see the Space Coast come back into view as the first stage gets closer and closer to landing zone 1. Note that that first stage is actually still coasting to its apogee. So it's about, as you can see there on your screen, 114, 115 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And it's going to keep coasting for a little bit. Beautiful view there on the right-hand side of your screen of that MVAC engine.
Stage 1, boost back, shut down.
All right, that boost back burn has concluded on the first stage. Everything looks nominal with the second stage trajectory. Everything also looking good.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Everything looking good on the first stage as well as we see those grid fins begin to deploy.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Now the next 2 major events we're tracking for the first stage, which right now is on the left-hand side of your screen, is going to be the entry burn at about T plus 6.5 minutes, where we'll light 3 of Falcon 9's first stage engines, followed shortly thereafter by the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes and 32 seconds, which will be a single engine burn to bring us back to landing zone 1 at Kennedy Space Center. Great view there of our crew on board. And you can, of course, always keep an eye on their telemetry down in the bottom corner of your screen. At this point, we should be just about a minute and a half away from that entry burn start.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory
Good
nominal.
call-outs there that we continue on a nominal trajectory with Dragon.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
And acknowledgement from the crew. These are incredible views on your screen right here. Again, the left-hand side of your screen is stage 1, making its way back to Florida. And stage 2, you see that MVAC engine burning, taking our AX-3 crew to orbit. That entry burn we're waiting on here is going to be a relatively quick burn, and what we're doing with our first stage is effectively scrubbing off some of that velocity as we come in for landing.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
That's a nominal trajectory for Dragon as we continue to orbit.
SpaceX Dragon.
Again, confirmation from the crew. And we are expecting about 2.5 more minutes from that second engine burn.
Stage 1, entry burn startup. Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
As we heard the call out, that entry burn has concluded. The next burn will be the landing burn. As I mentioned before, we're heading back to landing zone 1. We're going to come through the clouds right now.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Everything continues to look nominal for the second stage there on the right-hand side of your screen. These views really are breathtaking. Such clear, crisp views of both the first stage on the left and the second stage on the right. Right through with these clouds should be our first view. Once again, there it is. Just like magic, we see landing zone 1. Crowds cheering here at SpaceX Mission Control Hawthorne as we tune in to see if we stick the landing. And if you couldn't tell by the loud cheers, we did stick that landing. Falcon 9 has landed once again, but turning our attention back to the crew, as you see there, our next event is second engine cutoff, or SECO, as it's referred to there at the bottom of your screen. Second stage will coast for a few minutes until Dragon is commanded to separate. A lot of just the energy here at SpaceX Mission Control is buzzing. You can hear commentary behind us. Right now, the crew is experiencing about 3 Gs, so pretty much a roller coaster for those thrill seekers out there.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
And we are about 20 seconds away from that second engine cutoff. MLA will know this this feeling very well, this experience of going from now almost 4 Gs to as another abort mode there being called out. Now standing by for second engine cutoff.
There we heard those call outs of second engine shutdown and nominal orbital insertion.
Launch escape system disarmed.
And the disarming of our launch escape system. That, of course, means that our AX-3 crew is getting their first experience here in microgravity. Right now, Dragon is performing a series of onboard checks to ensure that we're ready to begin actuating those Draco maneuvering thrusters on board the vehicle. Now, as we prepare for Dragon separation, we should have a great camera view here in just a couple of minutes. Oh wow, and beautiful views of the Earth, and our MVAC engine up there in orbit as well. Views there as we await that separation. Absolutely incredible images that we are getting back from up in space as we await Dragon separation in just about a minute. More views there of our AX-3 crew on board Dragon. We are now just about 30 seconds away from that anticipated Dragon separation. Starting to see the crew there play a little bit with the fact that they are operating in microgravity. And a great shot of mission control here in our headquarters at Hawthorne, California. This camera view here is taking a look at Dragon. What we're waiting for is nose cone deployment, among other things, which, as Kate mentioned earlier, there we go.
As you can see, Dragon has separated from the second stage. A pretty cool view here looking up at the heat shield that will return the AX-3 crew back to Earth in just about 2 weeks. So this is our first view of AX-3 flying free. The next physical change that we will see will be the deployment of the nose cone. That will take
Dragon, this is the SpaceX Falcon team. We want to congratulate you on a great ride to orbit. I think you're demonstrating the ultimate in reuse Panther, a reused Dragon, and a reused Falcon. Or maybe flight experience is a better word. Enjoy space.
Copy all, Durst, and as I was